Members of council, if I can call this meeting to order. First off, we're going to start off with, it's the first night that we don't start off with a special meeting of council. This is good, we can dive right into committee.
Great. So, say something for accuracy.
Yeah. Members, if I may, I'm going to call upon Councillor David Elliott to give us a prayer, followed by Mr. Joe Longfellow, who's going to lead us in the national anthem. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we've been blessed with the opportunity to become leaders of our city. And not only have you blessed us with that, but we are also servants. We stand here and we serve the public. We are responsible to them and for them. And Lord, we just ask that you bless this meeting. May you bless the citizens of Port Colborne and keep them comfortable and safe. And let us deliberate all these issues before us, always putting forward the people that we represent first. We represent others first, ourselves second. Let us always keep that in mind as we debate. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you, Joe. Well done as always.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My pleasure as always.
Appreciate it. Members of council, we're now going to start off with the introduction of any addendum items. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. None this evening.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Members of council, I'll be looking for a motion to confirm the agenda. Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Doucette, are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Are there any disclosures of interest this evening? With none, we'll move on to the determination of committee items requiring separate discussion. Members of council, Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Worship. Item number 13.
Councillor Bodnar.
Item 8.
Councillor Elliott.
Item 10.
Any further items? Councillor Butters.
Item 14.
Any further items? For the remainder of the items, come a mover and seconder, please. Councillor Steele, Councillor Desmarais, are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to presentations, and I'll do those from the podium. Members of council and those in the gallery, it's my pleasure this evening to speak to you about the winners of the Niagara's South Coast Adventure Passport that just recently came to a close. As you know, the City of Port Colborne and the Port Colborne-Wainfleet Chamber of Commerce again partnered in the second annual Niagara South Coast Adventure Passport, which featured 10 destinations here in the City of Port Colborne as well as in the Wainfleet area. Entry to the contest was free, and members of council, it was easy to be part of. Adventure Passport participants had to visit a minimum of 7 of the 10 stops, record a trivia answer, or have their passport punched with a unique hole punch and submit it for entry to be eligible to win local prizes. Stops included popular attractions, tourism destinations, and commercial locations. The passport has become an excellent tool to encourage visitors to our area to stay longer and explore Niagara's south coast. By selecting a mixture of cultural attractions, natural attractions, and retail locations, we have provided a variety of locations in the area, as well as given both visitors and local residents the chance to learn about a place they may not have seen before. Members of Council, it's my pleasure to announce the winners of the 2011 Niagara's South Coast Adventure Passport. First off, with 7 stops, is Lynn Langman. Is Lynn here tonight? Lynn will be receiving a golf and ride for 2 at Colborne Golf and Country Club and a $100 certificate for Canal Side Pub and Eatery. The second place winner is Dave Shales. Is Dave here this evening? Dave was able to hit 8 stops, and Dave has won 2 subscriptions, 8 tickets for the 2012 Showboat Festival Theater Summer Season, and a $100 gift certificate from San Marcos Restaurant. Next is Judy Kramer. Is Judy in the audience? Judy is not. Judy Kramer, 9 stops, and she wins a 1-night accommodation at Tallwood Manor Bed and Breakfast and a $100 certificate for the Smoke and Buddha restaurant. And lastly is our grand prize winner. She hit all 10 stops. Miss Bogna Przybylak. Did I announce it right?
Yes, Przybylak.
Perfect. Perfect. Bogna wins a 1-night accommodation at Lake Breeze Bed and Breakfast and wins a $100 gift certificate for At 27 Restaurant and a gift certificate for the Spa Port Colborne. Bogna, I want to call you up here and present you with a certificate, as well as your prizes for winning this great adventure. Come on up here. You do have your 10-minute speech ready, right? No? I'm just kidding.
You.
Congratulations. And I do have here, on behalf of all of us, most importantly, the residents of the city of Port Colborne and the township of Wainfleet, to present to you in recognition of your achievement as winner of the 2011 Niagara South Coast Adventure Passport Contest. On behalf of members of City Council and all the citizens of the city of Port Colborne, we hope you enjoyed your tour through Niagara South Coast as you explored some of what we have to offer here in our community.
Very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well done. I have these for you as well. Prizes. And I'm going to now call up Mr. Mike Slope, who's the president of the Chamber of Commerce. Mike, come on up.
Congratulations. It's a pleasure. And where are you from? Are you?
I lived in Port Colborne for 19 years.
Wonderful. Well, see if we can get you to come up and do that again. And get that little gift certificates for a nice little restaurant in Port Colborne that I hang out at 6 days a week. Congratulations. Want to get a picture?
You guys want to get a picture? Okay, great.
Sure.
Once again, congratulations. Well done. Members of Council, this evening we have one delegation, and this delegation is Ms. Rhonda Barron. Rhonda is the health promoter over at Bridges Community Health Center, as well as David Anderson, the housing coordinator for Port Cares, with respect to youth without secure housing. Folks, come on up. Welcome. Going to press the gray button, and the floor is all yours.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. Thank you for the opportunity to present tonight. Both Dave and I are here on behalf of the Youth Without Secure Housing Committee. The idea of tonight's presentation is to raise awareness of the issues, the triggers, and the myths surrounding youth homelessness. Sorry, just orienting myself here. Okay. All right. So we'd like to start with offering you a little bit of background on the Youth Without Secure Housing Committee. It has its roots in the St. Catharines chapter of the Canadian Federation of University Women, as well as the Fort Erie Community Health and Wellness Committee. In 2005, the Holy Family Boys Shelter was closing in Niagara Falls, and they had some funds that they needed to deal with that were specifically designated to homelessness as it related to the male population. So they contacted the Fort Erie Community Health and Wellness Coordinator at that time, and that ended up in engaging a number of stakeholders in and around youth homelessness to find out perhaps if there was a need to start up a shelter in Fort Erie. At that time, they decided to engage the stakeholders, and the decision was that they needed some data before they could move forward. And so they had partnered with some researchers at Brock University, and some data was gathered, and from that they identified the need to form a committee. At the same time, but rather independently, the St. Catharines chapter of University Women had passed a resolution to end youth homelessness, and they were in the process of doing some advocacy work by engaging MPs and MPPs. And at that time, they had garnered the support of MP Rick Dykstra, who became involved and recommended that the committee, then known as the St. Catharines Transitional Youth Housing Committee, gather data on youth homelessness as well in Niagara in order to move forward. It was at that time that they learned of the Youth Without Secure Housing report, and then shortly after that, the two committees amalgamated to form a region-wide Youth Without Secure Housing Committee. So that gives you a little bit of background with respect to how things have developed in the last few years. Okay, a little bit of a delay in transitioning slides. Well, I'll continue to move forward. You do have paper copies as well, I trust? Yes. Okay, all right, then we're all good. When technology fails, you always want a hard copy around. So the Youth Without Secure Housing Committee's vision is for youth to be able to access services and supports within their community. Their mandate is to provide advice, direction, and counsel to all stakeholders regarding implementation and delivery of its community plan. Their role is to annually review the community plan, engage and build partnerships with Niagara and all levels of government, engage stakeholders through consultations, and identify leaders for the development of support continuum for youth. So the Youth Without Secure Housing Committee consists of various organizations and government divisions who meet once a month at various regional locations. And here's a listing of those organizations and governments that are involved in the committee. You may be surprised to know that of the 150,000 people that are homeless in Canada, 65,000 of them are youth. 65,000 youth are homeless at some point every year in our country. 80% of Niagara youth identified conflict as the cause of homelessness, of which 69% of the cases were a result of parental behavior. I think this fact really helps to dispel some of the myths. A lot of times there is a perception that these kids are just behaving badly, when in fact it's parental behavior such as abuse, substance abuse, and or parental mental health issues that are behind the problem. Local studies on youth homelessness reveal that youth do not identify themselves as being homeless. The median age of becoming homeless is 16. Youth homelessness is a consequence of multiple stressors in a young person's life. Youth do recognize the need for help. In fact, they're crying for help. 80% of adults in one of the studies stated childhood events had an impact on being homeless as adults. Just for your information, the definition of chronic homelessness is a person considered to be chronically homeless is if they have been continuously homeless for a year or more, have had at least 4 episodes of homelessness in the past 3 years, and in order to be considered homeless, a person must have been sleeping in a place not meant for human habitation, such as the streets, and or in an emergency homeless This gives you some information on the housing situation of homeless youth in Niagara. 35% of them stayed in shelters. 50% stayed in apartments. However, 45% of those youth were couch surfing. That's often referred to as hidden homelessness. 7.5% stayed with parents, and 7.5% stayed in transitional housing, motels, or abandoned housing. This slide provides an overview of the dollars and cents of homelessness. Quite often when we're looking at the costs of a program or the costs of a social ill, we're looking at the monies that we're investing into that program. What we often miss are the indirect and societal costs. These are often not part of our fiscal analysis, and that's highly problematic. And that's something that we really want to impress upon you today, is if we look at the costs of homelessness, we can clearly see that it goes far beyond the dollars that we invest in programs. Annually, the average homeless person uses $4,714 in public health care, whereas an average Canadian uses $2,633. So this results in an extra $416 to $624 million per year in healthcare costs alone to treat the homeless population. I'm going to hand things over now to Dave, who's going to do the other half of the presentation.
What's interesting, the second half will probably be a little bit quicker than the first half because I don't have all of the helps besides to explain the youth without secure housing. Now, as far as the next slide, I think we're... What has been done? Well, we're connecting, we're coordinating access to services for at-risk youth in Niagara, and that's happening through the committee right now. We have a lot of different organizations that are involved with the youth without secure housing at this point, and we're just starting. I mean, I'm just new to this committee as of last month. That was my first time, and then they got me connected with tonight. So it's exciting to know that there is work that's been happening beforehand and that it will continue to happen here. So in progress, we have system discharge planning. With a lot of our youth, I may, like for myself, I'm front line. I have 11 units, and a lot of youth go through those units. Some go through a revolving door, and so where do they go after that? That's my concern. And whether we're putting the most strong effort in, it doesn't change the fact that I can't do it all, and that's why we need all of the members of our community to find you know, just safe places for the youth to go after they've went through, say, transitional housing, which I do. And best practices are committee members share information regarding program updates and trends in their community, and support research studies about homeless youth in Niagara and distribute findings through various mediums, local news outlets, websites. And there's, for me, it's the story is the most powerful thing. It's what a lot of the youth go through, and they present with the scariest situations. Like when we talk about you know, the parents' involvement or lack of involvement, that's where some of the biggest struggle is. The youth have no place to go. The parents have kicked them out, 14, 15, 16 years old, and they have no place to go. And what do we have here in Port Colborne? We have some organizations, we have some units that are available, but most youth are continuing to couch surf. They're going from friend to friend's house, and they're often wearing out their welcome there. And without that stable influence of parents or you know, it could be like a favorite uncle, it could be anybody. I feel for those kids, and that's what we're trying to change here. Um, Best practices, I'm not sure how complete these stats are. I don't know about you, Rhonda. Do you think 2010, 48?
That's based on regional stats.
Okay. And I'm just thinking, I'm not sure how complete that is. I don't think that reflects what's really going on with our youth. I think it's much higher than that. And it says a change from previous year. It looks good on paper, 14% less or whatever, but I don't think that's the reality. And I'm not speaking as an expert here. So there are definite gaps. The lack of awareness for youth homelessness in Niagara, the public attitude and perception of youth, you know, as far as the causes of youth homelessness. A lot of times we put that responsibility on the youth, and meanwhile the youth hasn't been taught or trained, and they don't even know how to react to any given situation. So the first time they come up against situations in school, or say with someone that reminds them of their parents, they react. And then you get a worst case scenario, and nobody wants to deal with them. So that's what we're trying to do, is make a difference in their lives. We're trying to, through the Youth Without Secure Housing Committee, just impact these youth and find some place for them to go and find that safety for them. The effects of youth homelessness on families is huge, and I don't think we're touching the tip of the iceberg on just the struggles involved. Reconnecting youth with their families would be ideal, but a lot of times it's the parents that need the work, and so you can put them back into an unsafe situation, and then the youth is just going to bolt again. I just know that from experience with the youth that I've been working with. And more gaps, lack of resources, including, I'll say, financial support running out with programs, support services in the community that youth can rely on or connect to, even after leaving an agency. Again, where do they go? Programming depends on what our criteria is for doing our job, whether we can do anything with the youth as they're on their way out. We need affordable, appropriate housing. I was just talking to Rhonda a little bit earlier just about a youth on, say, Ontario Works, $592 a month, and their shelter portion is $372, and so you're going to put $372 into unit that's $600. I don't think so. So you know that there's real gaps there. I don't know how youth find stable housing sometimes. It's scary, you know. I've got 5 boys myself, 25 through 34, and I hate to see them in that position where they don't have some place to stay. And I'm thinking too, like with my boys, because they make mistakes, doesn't mean I kick them out. But a lot of these youth are kicked out. And so again, where do they go? And who's going to take up the slack and care for these youth? Next steps, connect with other staff organizations such as recreational departments for programming support, raise awareness and build partnerships among the community and all levels of government. All of this requires trust too. The youth don't necessarily trust other agencies. It takes a little bit of time to build that rapport with them. So the asks are share Youth Without Secure Housing related information with the community, let them know. And this, again, this is like first time stuff. We're just starting to let you know what's happening in the community. Invisible homelessness, I guess we do have a YouTube video, but before we go there, I just want, I know it may seem childish to you guys, but and you probably don't do this very often, but why don't you close your eyes? I just want to do just a little bit of, I guess, a thought process with you. So close your eyes and think about the worst thing that has ever happened to you. Now picture how much worse it would be without secure housing. You can open your eyes, guys. Youth present with multiple issues and deficits. Homelessness makes it worse. It's basic, all right?
Thanks, Mrs. B.
Oh, you're really good at See you, Lord.
See you.
Just a short video to underscore how many youth in Niagara are actually couch surfing. Even though our hard, cold street numbers are not as significant, or as high, I should say, as they are in large urban centers, there are a number of our youth sleeping on sofas every night. Okay. Thank you.
Excellent. David, thank you. Great presentation, well stated. Members of council, are there any questions or comments? With no questions or comments, thank you once again. Truly appreciate it. Members of council, I'm not going to move on to my report. My report has to do with, is going to be concluded with two actions attached to them. One may seem a bit dry, but I think it's imminent that you understand, as well as give some direction toward a regional issue. Members of council will be aware of a mapping mistake that the region had made a few years back, and something I, as well as Dan, have been working on for the better part of the last year and a half, for the most part. And it's been quite challenging with respect to the mistake that was made at the regional level in terms of the proper mapping in our new industrial lands area. Excuse me. This coming Thursday, members of council, Regional Council will be considering the Niagara Gateway Economic Zone and Center Draft Regional Policy Plan Amendment. This is the report that identifies Niagara's inventory of lands for economic growth and sustainability. Upon its ratification, this report and appendix will be circulated to all local municipalities throughout the Niagara region with a request for formal comments, as well as public consultation, which will commence immediately in aligning itself with those comments coming from municipal councils and staff. As members of council are aware, the Gateway Economic Center is the settlement areas in Thorold, Welland, and here in the city of Port Colborne, also specific to employment lands with linkages to the urban growth centers of downtown St. Catharines. Implementation of the Gateway Economic Zone and Center is to be done through an amendment to the regional policy plan and corresponding local official plan amendments in the 5 local municipalities. And once again, members of council, I do apologize. This is going to be a bit dry, but it's very important that you understand it, as well as give direction for myself and David when we go to the region this coming Thursday. There is a map on the screen, and it shows the lands of which I'm speaking about. The Dillon report identified 2 unique areas within the economic gateway that could provide the initial phasing of the development of the priority employment lands in the gateway, specific to both the city of Port Colborne, parts of the southern tier, which also includes the city of Welland. The first being the Highway 406-140 economic gateway, of which will place an emphasis on transportation, trade, warehousing, food processing, and advanced manufacturing. The second being the Welland Canal Green Manufacturing and Assembly Zone, of which will focus on specialized industries with transport goods and materials by ship, as well as dry industrial. All employment lands within the settlement areas in the gateway would have the gateway land use policies apply. And this is the key part, members of council. They'll have the key land use policies apply. The above areas are priority for investment to enable and support immediate development of these lands. The Dillon study recognized that there are vacant rural employment lands in this vicinity of the urban employment lands in the southern tier of the Niagara region. These areas are appropriate for a new land use category entitled Rural Employment Lands. Given the circumstances and nature of the historic development land use planning policy and approach, the policy direction for rural employment lands is as follows. I need you to absorb this. The lands will be available for dry industrial uses that are of low intensity nature. The lands will not be part of the settlement area. The lands cannot be used for residential due to the incompatibility of residential development in close proximity to industrial uses. The lands cannot be used for major commercial development, as this type of development requires hard services, especially water and wastewater. The lands that are continuous to the urban employment lands may be considered for future urban boundary expansion, subject to a regional municipal comprehensive review to establish the need for additional urban employment lands. It is in fact, members of council, anticipated that each 5-year review of the regional plan will include this type of review. Finally, and this is the most important, for the lands within the city of Port Colborne, there are 2 blocks of land on the east side of the Welland Canal to which this direction applies. These 2 blocks are currently shown as deferred, as shown on the screen, and the maps on your desks within the original policy plan. To implement the rural employment land designation, the amendment proposes to remove the deferral and replace it with the rural employment land designation. Although this is a technical requirement, it is important to understand the need for this approach, whereby there lies the challenge. The need to include additional lands within a deferred urban setting to accommodate the need for industrial growth in these lands within the city of Port Colborne. Once again, whereby there lies the challenge. Upon having discussions at the Region's Planning Committee, followed by discussions with regional staff, it has been agreed upon that an update memorandum be attached to the report going to Regional Council this Thursday. An update memorandum. This memo is an update arising from the discussion at the Integrated Community Planning Committee of January 11, 2012. Report ICP 7/2012 is in fact the draft regional policy plan amendment to implement the Gateway Economic Center as well as the zone. The intent, members of council, of this report is to release the draft for consultation, as I mentioned earlier. The updates relate to this report, which I had deferred. I had deferred at the last committee meeting, which was last Tuesday. No, the planning meeting was last Tuesday. And the intent of that deferral was to bring it back to your attention, as well as our planners' attention, and to ensure that discussion did take place here in the city of Port Colborne, and that a solidified or ratified decision be made by this council. The specific issue to that deferral relates to Schedule 3 of the amendment, and the lands that are currently shown as deferred urban, as you can see on the mapping. Now you'll see on the mapping there's a blue area, there's 3 blue areas, 2 on the west side of Highway 140 and 1 on the east side of Highway 140. Those lands were once classified as deferred urban within the regional policy plan. The draft plan proposes to designate these lands as rural employment lands with the following policy direction. So I explained to you what was, and now I'm going to explain to you what is and what we're proposing. The lands would be permitted dry industrial uses, generally uses that require little to no water wastewater. The dry industrial uses would have private water and private wastewater servicing. The lands would not be part of the settlement area. The lands would not be permitted to have major commercial or residential uses, as major commercial uses require urban servicing and residential uses are not compatible with industrial uses. Land use compatibility with residential development in Dane City, planned and or approved, must be achieved. This is the key bullet, folks. The lands would be a priority for future urban boundary expansion when such an expansion is warranted, which would then include urban servicing, municipal water and wastewater would be imminent. That's key, folks, because at the end of the day, although we have an abundant amount of urban boundary, or urban, I'll use the word capacity, okay, classified capacity in the city, within that urban capacity, we don't have any industrial. So, and that's the argument that I'm trying to get across at the region. They keep telling me we have capacity within our urban boundary, so therefore we don't require an urban boundary expansion. However, I can't place a plant on Kent Street. I can't place a plant on Catherine Street or within the urban boundaries that we have available, and in the industrial zoned areas that we have available here in the city of Port Colborne, we are out of industrial land. Hence the reason why staff has come back throughout the last 2 years, I believe, Ron, with an industrial land study that recommends the entire corridor between East Main and East Main along the 140, East Main and Port Colborne and East Main and Welland, become the new industrial area for new employment lands on behalf of not just our communities, but on behalf of the entire region of Niagara. Hence, how important this report is to establish and make sure that we do it right now, not to have to go or force those that want to develop or invest in those lands have to go and jump through hoops later on in future stages of development. So members of council, after discussion with the region, we recommend the following modifications to the draft plan. That one, the lands in Port Colborne be identified as a special gateway employment policy area. Two, the transportation access of Highway 140 be specifically identified as a unique characteristic of these lands supporting the special gateway employment policy area designation. Ensuring the policy direction is specific to the lands being a priority area for future urban boundary expansion and, most importantly, municipal servicing. And the above bulleted list of policies will continue to apply to these lands from here on in. On this basis, members of council, I feel it will address the concerns I provided at the Region's Planning Committee. And this evening, City Council will also be giving consideration to a report that will direct staff to discuss the Site A lands with the region of Niagara to be included as well as part of the Niagara Economic Gateway Center, which would be consistent with the entire inventory of new industrial established lands along the 140, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, is well in excess of about 600 acres in Port Colborne alone, not including the city of Welland. So members of council, in conclusion, establishing these lands as part of the Gateway Economic Center, including the amendments attached, sets the foundation for Niagara's new economy by exposing Niagara's strengths through new land use policy. Members, the city of Port Colborne is an important component of Niagara's overall inventory and therefore future economic success. The Gateway identifies and exposes strategic locations as well as amenities and services for economic growth while enhancing new incentive opportunities for existing industry as well, and that's equally as important. Once again, the city of Port Colborne is an integral part of the economic gateway due to the strengths that we possess. Once this amendment is passed, it will lead the way, it will blaze a trail, and be extremely important that we then move forward with an aggressive marketing strategy. Dan, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well said. Just a little bit of clarification on the map that you see before you this evening. The lands north of Forks Road, which we refer to as Site A, were not part of the original recommendation by regional planning staff. That is something that my report this evening speaks of, which council has endorsed, which I actually have shown in addition to include as the Economic Gateway Center, which the mayor has mentioned. But there is a distinction. The land south of Forks Road, the blue you see, is the deferred urban areas. The lands north were not included, but as the mayor has mentioned, we want to also ask the region to include those lands, which we know as Site A. Mr. Mayor has well said, as those lands are very strategic to our industrial employment possibilities, given their location, multimodal, next to the rail line, the highway, 140, and the ship traffic. So, Mr. Mayor, I'll leave it at that, and I hope that with council's support, that we can have these lands identified and we can bring development to Port Colborne.
And the last thing that has to be mentioned, members of council, is the investments we expect the region to make with respect to infrastructure, water, wastewater. We know we have water going out in that area. It goes up to the poultry with the Pinties, which is good. Great to be able to hook into eventually and provide water to some of these lands, those lands that are within the urban area, as well as the deferred urban area. But I think what's equally as important is the wastewater trunk that we're trying to get under the canal. We have to ensure that the region understands that there's going to be a return on that investment. If in fact we're looking at only servicing about 60 to 80 acres of that land, it's very unlikely the region's going to recognize that return on investment and therefore not proceed with the investment. So therefore, by including this as we call it, a special policy area, but really it's a deferred urban area. That then adds another 500 to 600 acres to it, which then enables the region to recognize that return on the investment to bring that infrastructure underneath the canal. Very important that we get included within the next 5 to 10 year capital plan, so that therefore when, and I say when because this land is very valuable, when an investor comes into Port Colborne to want to put a development in, we'll be able to turn on a dime with respect to ensuring that that land is serviced as per their requirements. So with that, I'm not going to proceed to the last part of my report. I'm going to ask for any questions by members of council with respect to that. I'm not looking for a motion. I'm just looking for a level of comfort. So when I go to the region this Thursday, my council understands what we're talking about here, what we're discussing here, and I'll get your blessing to proceed in the direction that I've already started. I have Councillor Butters and Steele.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions. First of all, with these proposed changes, how will the surrounding landowners to these lands be notified, and what will be a process for their input or concerns to be addressed? That'd be my first question. My next question deals with part of your presentation dealt with those new uses under that gateway umbrella. They would have to be compatible with, you mentioned the built-up area of Dane City, but there are certainly residences in that area, so I'm assuming that the compatibility part of that would also apply to residences in that area. So if you could answer those two, I'd appreciate it.
Mr. Aquino.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Butters, as this is a regional initiative, it's the same as if we were doing it. There is a formal planning process that has to unfold. There will be notification within the newspapers. Certainly, if it's council's blessing, once we actually get the dates for public comments, we can also forward those to the residents within the area. But again, it's a regional initiative. Once this does get approved by regional council, once we do our official plan update, we also will be engaging the public. So I hope that answers your first question. With respect to the uses permitted on the property, with the adjacent residential lands to the west in Dane City and what is around in the area, there is the ministry's D6 guidelines that talk about compatibility and separation. There are certain, depending on what the industry that is there is a minimum distance that's required unless it can be studied away through noise, emission studies. So that all is taken into account when an actual development is proposed.
Okay. Go ahead.
Then I would suggest that we not just leave it for notification in the newspapers, because there's lots of people don't get the paper, that when that time comes that we make sure that there's the drop-off in mailboxes in that area, and make sure that everybody gets that kind of notification. If they want to participate in this process, then they can't say, well, we didn't see it in the paper or we didn't see it posted somewhere. We got to put these things in mailboxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butters. Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Your Worship. In receiving this letter from the region, which was in our package for correspondence, it was very confusing. You have shed some light on it because, in essence, from Mr. Robson, he never really did tell us in his letter which map was included and which was the wrong map. So am I to believe that this was the original map that's been discussed on numerous occasions with this council that you were speaking with tonight, correct? And this was the map that was originally included in report RPPA 2-2009.
Mr. Aquino.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Steele, the lands that were discussed were these and those.
What members of council, he's pointing at the lands west of 140, which would be the lands, the two bigger parcels.
The two southerly.
I'm sorry.
South
of the bigger parcel, which is Site A. You got the one on the left there, and you see the little triangle on the bottom, on the right side of the 140? Right there, those two tracts of land.
So, through you, Your Worship, so that in essence, what we're doing is taking that one step further and really adding Site A to that original map that was put into that original policy plan amendment by the region. Then they put in maps that were incorrect later on in amendments to that. Is that correct?
Well, Site A is a separate issue. Site A is a report that we have tonight that we've already passed.
That's right.
But what's happened here is the other two pieces of property, they were in, they arbitrarily took them out, we put them back in. However, instead of continuing as deferred urban, we're gonna call Gateway Special Policy.
Okay, good. Thank you, Worship. And obviously, I
Dan, you
totally
wanna add
support
to
this.
that?
Just for council's information, this was a report that I brought forward last year, that we received direction that council wanted to continue to have those lands identified as deferred. So that's what we ensure, that those lands actually are identified as deferred, and as the mayor mentioned, we're bringing forward another tract of land to the north.
Further questions or comments? Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we're actually looking to push, I guess, the urban boundary to include these areas. That's what our ask would be to the region.
Mr. Aquilina?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Elliott, it will be a special policy area. And once it's determined that there is a need to expand our urban area boundary, it will include these lands. The region will be the ones that will initiate it, but there has to be a need to have those lands serviced. And then it will be identified through that policy amendment to include those lands within our urban area boundary.
Councilor?
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. You know what? Fully supportive of it, especially going all the way up to 140. I guess the only question is, has any discussion been held with the city of Welland? Are we going to push for this even if Welland decides not to join in and just get the special zoning moving forward on our own and just use our lands and let them fight the good fight when it comes for them?
Mr. Aquilina?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and Councilor Elliott. Right now, the city of Welland's urban area lands actually extend to the northerly limit of Port Colborne. So they're already in. Ours are special because there are no present services there. So they'll be in full support of this as well.
Okay. Further questions or comments? Just a Council Butters?
Just one more. By endorsing this plan, this is not endorsing Nyan as per se, this is only endorsing this plan, correct?
Mr. Aquilina?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councilor Butters. In no way does this even speak to the proposal before us with Nyan. This is strictly dealing with land use analysis and what's best for the overall. You're welcome. I'll leave it at that.
Essentially, what we're doing here, Councilor, is we're putting in place an inventory of new industrial lands. As was mentioned earlier, these lands are very unique to the region, if not the entire country, as they attach themselves to the Welland Canal, rail, road, and of course their location being within a one-day's drive of 44% of North America's annual income. They're quite robust in terms of what they can offer the investment market. Now it's just a matter of getting them packaged and giving then Stephen the opportunity to go out there, market it, and hopefully bring some investment that can grow on those lands. Okay? Councilor Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, please. Through you to you, how about that? I know the region has had discussions around the ending of, I guess, if you want to call it, pre-servicing land. They don't want to service it and have the land sit for 10 or 15 years before it becomes useful. This all plays out. Can you see or give us any expectation of how quick a turnaround could be if everything goes according to Hoyle? How quick will the region respond to servicing the needs of the land that we need? Can we expect them to service it quickly, and how quickly can we expect it? If that's not asked in a roundabout kind of way. We go through the rezoning process and we get it as the Gateway Special. What can we expect in return from the region to react to our needs, I guess is the best way to put it.
And that's a great question, Councilor, and it's one of the reasons why we want to push this so aggressively, so that therefore, let's face it, if it's not Gateway Special Policy, it just simply is rural employment lands, we would then never have a chance, not in our lifetime, to see servicing happen on that land. And hence one of the reasons why I was trying to push it as hard as I can at the region to at least get special policy attached to it, if not deferred urban, so that therefore, when there is that time that comes, and you're right, the region is getting away from speculating because they don't want to put a whole bunch of money in the ground that's going to sit there vacant or stagnant for 10, 15 years. That's your money. So they're more going toward what's going to happen today. And this land is what's going to happen today with respect to investment. Now, having said that, how fast can they put the money in the ground? They've already started. There's an environmental assessment that we had pushed through last year That environmental assessment is looking at the crossing of the canal with wastewater, trunk coming from the seaway plant onto the canal or in a second concession area. Once the EA is done, and that is validated by what we're doing here, but as well with the growth of that area, we're hoping to then be included within the 5 to 10 year capital plan. And then, of course, beyond that, it'll be up to us, myself and Councillor Barrick, to push that as part of the shorter term versus longer term capital plan. Get, at the very least, Councillor Elliott, get that trunk underneath the canal. Because once that trunk is underneath the canal, then it's a heck of a lot easier to tap into that trunk for wastewater and the current water line that's out there to then start servicing that land from second concession north along the canal. Okay? But it's a great point, because this validates that. This gives us that ROI. Otherwise, they wouldn't even look at it. So members of council, do I get consensus from council that we're good with this? I don't think a motion is needed. Dan, do you think there's a motion needed? Ashley, you're okay with that? Just direction? Okay. So direction's fine, guys? Okay, so I feel comfortable going to the region this Thursday. They just don't want to do it, and I'll come back here and say, what the heck you guys doing?
Doesn't agree.
Barbara, can you get that mic? The final part of my report, folks, is something I'm sure many of you read in the paper or seen on Global TV or even read about on Facebook, and it's a situation that's been unfortunate, but I thought it necessary to bring forward to you this evening, and that's a situation having to do with Mr. Alistair McPherson, a person that unfortunately had just recently passed away, and a water bill that unfortunately was an inflated bill due to the circumstances. As members of council may recognize, a few weeks ago, corporate services staff was approached by Ms. Kara Zanvliet with respect to her father's water bill. At that time, members of council, she had explained to staff the circumstances of the inflated bill, which was due to his passing while running the water, and she had asked staff for some relief of this bill. Although members of City Council were not informed of the situation, as the individual went directly to staff, followed by the media, and all members of council, including myself, were only made aware of this issue upon reading it, and reading the original article in the local newspaper. City Council this evening has an opportunity to make a decision on Ms. Zanvliet's request. And I must mention this, members of council, I think it's prudent to mention the fact that, and like to add the fact that the city staff was simply following policy with this regard, as set out by you, members of City Council. There presently exists no mechanism for staff to do otherwise. And I want that understood, especially publicly. There's no mechanism for staff to deviate from policy arbitrarily. It's just simply, well, it's against the law, quite frankly. The only people that can give staff the authority to deviate from policy is members of council. Not members of council individually, not myself individually, but members of council on this horseshoe are the only ones that can allow staff to deviate from policy. Although I have spoken to staff to ensure that in the future, when an issue such as this arises, they are, one, to highlight the different options available for the customer's consideration. I think that's very important, whether it's planning, whether it's finance. It's very important for our staff to highlight to the customer what their options are. And secondly, especially when sensitivity is attached to it, to in fact both inform myself as well as members of City Council to bring it to our immediate attention for an appropriate response. I have asked staff to bring forward options for Council's consideration this evening. Members of Council will see that on their desks, and I will now ask for Council's pleasure on this request. So I have Councillor Kenny first, and Councillor Bodner, and Councillor Desmarais. Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you mentioned, I think we were all surprised when we saw that in the paper, and that was our very first notification. My concern never really went to the person holding up the bill, saying we were billing a dead man. My concern went out to the deceased, that 3 weeks had passed for this gentleman before any family member recognized that they had not heard from him. So my concern was for the deceased. And then I thought to myself, I had a hard time with it, because I thought to myself, in the end, it's going to be the estate that's going to pay any outstanding bills, whether it be hydro, heat, or water, whatever. Those are the utilities. and it's his estate that's going to be paying this bill, not the individual in the paper making an issue that we had drowned a dead man. I did not appreciate that, or that event going to the media. However, as you had said, we had asked Mr. Sinez to give us some options as to how we could handle this. And again, like I said, I struggled with it. But I did have the opportunity prior to tonight's meeting to speak to our regional councillor, Barrick, who was at a meeting with I just before this one, and ask him how he would approach the region with it as well, because as you remember, we're paying the region back, as Mr. Sinez has pointed out. So he is more than willing to go with you as members of the Public Works to bring this forward and to the region and have that portion removed or deferred. And I would like us, or like council, to consider, you have the page in front of you, to consider the option 2, which Mr. Sinez has worked out. The average use for the same period was $162.85, and that a bill to his estate go out to that $162.85, and that we write off the $409.29 with the acknowledgement that Mr. Councillor Barrick will be going to the region and asking for forgiveness of that amount as well.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Do we have a seconder to that, please? Councillor Elliott. I'm going to ask Councillor, or Mr. Sinez, to highlight option 2 with respect to what he has here before us. Mr. Sinez.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Option 2 basically is, what we did was we took the same period for the last 3 years of consumption, and we averaged that consumption out to approximately 13 cubic meters of usage in the same period. And we used that consumption to calculate what the water usage and the sewer usage bill would be, and added it to the normal water capital and sewer capital bill that is the norm for all properties, and that bill then comes out to $162.85.
So essentially the 409.29 is what was used because of the unfortunate circumstances?
409, the difference is $409.29, and the majority of that is to deal with the 188 cubic meters that would have been the excessive.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Sinez. Thank you, Councillor Kenny, and thank you, Councillor Elliott. Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I guess we all wrestle with this, and certainly we didn't like to see it in the paper, but we have to make it a decision on it. And I guess what do we use to decide? And we can use press reports, or the people's ability to pay is one way. Certainly, the unfortunate passing of the gentleman. Is there precedent? Have we done this before? What's the dollar amount of the bill? And as was tweeted to one of the newspapers, oh, just send it to council because they want to get reelected and they're going to give you the money anyways. I really think what we should do is look at what's fair to the people that are paying the water bills. I don't pay a water bill. It isn't going to come off my, the amount that is determined by how much you pay for water. But I really think that that we have to be fair to the people that pay the water bill, because that's where this money is going to come from. There's no other place to get it from. And I guess certainly as my term as mayor, and I know, I won't speak for Vance, but I can almost assure you that we have people come to us a number of times a year with some heart-wrenching stories about, how they can't pay their water bill. And, everything from they were on vacation and somebody turned their back tap on outside of their house and it ran for 2 weeks, there's all kinds of things that we've dealt with. And I really have a hard time, and I'm not a compassionate person. I think anybody that knows me certainly is, but I can't support that number 2. I would certainly, if that passes, it passes, but I certainly will, if it fails, I'll go to number 1, where they pay the full charge of the water. I think that's fair to the people that pay water bills. I certainly have talk to people that say, you know, I've got a very small pension, I have a disabled daughter at home, I struggle to pay my water bill. And I don't care whether it's $30, $3, or 3 cents, because this isn't a big lot of money on people's water bill. But it's just the principle of the thing. I don't think it's right, and I think that it's an unfortunate circumstance, but the estate will pay this water bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bodnar. Councillor Demery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, Councillor Kenny actually said most of what I had intended to say. I would be willing to support item 2 as well, option 2 rather. It's a really unfortunate set of circumstances, and it's unfortunate that it's gone in this direction. I would wonder though if the insurance might pick up the overage on the water, because it was obviously an accidental situation. I don't know, but I'm sorry to see it have gone this way, and I'm sorry that the media handled it the way they did as well.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further comments, questions? Councillor Elliott.
This is just an issue that there's almost no right answer to. I mean, even at work today, I was asking people in our office, what would you do? Half the people were saying, make them pay the whole bill. The other half the people said, you can't make them pay. One thing I would like to do is stand up and take one for city staff, because they were only doing their job. They got undue criticism for standing up for city policy, and they were criticized for something that they had no control over. And for Peter to get the brunt of the anger of people online and in the city and basically across Ontario, because it was on the news, is unfair to him. He basically stated what our city policy was, and that's not fair to him. If people are going to criticize anybody, criticize us 8 that are sitting here that are going to make this decision, and we'll deal with that because that's our job, and that's, you know, comes with the territory and why we were elected. I'm still up in the air. You know, I feel sorry for the family. I really do. And I can understand what Councillor Bodnar is talking about. You know, the estate's going to pick it up. We've got people every day, and I mean, we're talking just over a year ago on the campaign trail. How many people did you knock on the door and you heard that they were having trouble with electricity, with water, with taxes? Paychecks are smaller, pensions are smaller. You know, I have family members that told me, make them pay it, because it's unfortunate, but it's just something that has to be paid. The water went through, and the estate's going to pick up the cost of the bill and leave it at that. So I seconded your motion just to get it on the floor, but you know what? I'm thinking with Councillor Bodnar that we got to make them pay. It's not out of pocket. It's not an undue hardship on the family. It's going to be paid from the estate of the deceased, and they will continue to move on. And if that sounds cold-hearted, you know, I think all of you know that I would hope that I'm not like that, and that I just think that this is the right thing to do for the rest of the people, because like Bodnar said, Councillor Bodnar said, if there's not a precedent, this may set it, and we may open the floodgates of people coming in looking for relief. And I don't want that to get out as we're uncaring, but I just think that's the way that we should go.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Steele, then Doucette.
Thank you, Your Worship. I mean, actually what everybody said is correct. They're all right. I agree with what everyone has said here. It's the unfortunate part about it. Same vein as David. Through Your Worship to Peter. Peter, just give us an explanation here, because basically in any community across Ontario, people pass away in estates. There's taxes, hydro, heat, water, sewer. On a normal day-to-day basis within City Hall, aside from this situation where, you know, I think very rarely, in fact, in the 13 years I've been here, I've never had anybody come forward with that somebody's passed away and water's been left running. Yes, there's those things out there where, you know, you can consider vandalism where you're away and somebody turns your tap on and lets it go. I've had claims where people shove a hose through a window and turn it on, knowing that people are away, and they come home with the basement's flooded. Again, on the insurance side, that's what can help them there as far as the damage goes. But Peter, on a day-to-day basis, what bills would be continue to be sent out to an estate, and how we are notified that someone may have passed away where there's somebody no longer living in that residence. Can you just give
Mr.
a
Smith?
synopsis on that?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. The normal course is, and we run into it a lot of times, obviously people pass away and leave their houses, and usually the family or whoever is taking care of the estate would contact the city, and whether it's for water, property taxes, I'm sure that they contact hydro, gas, and all the utilities type of thing. And essentially then there's we go through the process of doing a final read of the account, and then if it's to be changed into the estate of so-and-so, then final bills are sent out, and normally they're paid. Obviously this is a different situation. The years that I've been here, I've never had the situation of an individual that has actually passed away, but water's been running. I guess it'd be no different than hydro continuing to run or gas continuing to run, but it is a very different situation. It is unfortunate, and as I mentioned before, it was just a matter of, there is a cost of the utility, and that was the cost, and so that was explained to the individuals, and unfortunately it wasn't taken any further other than to the media, and before we were able to get to council was in the next day, and this is where we're at. But basically to answer your question, on a normal day-to-day basis, it happens all the time, and final bills are done, and they're made out to the estates and paid through the estate.
Councillor?
Thank you, Your Worship. So in essence, have we had estates come back, or family of estates come back and say, they're no longer here, we don't want to pay this because this isn't being used? In essence, unless the family's going in and running water, the water portion I can understand. However, the hard charges, your sewer and water hard charges, they'll always continue until that estate's settled and the property changes hands, either to an owner or to another member of the family. So those costs continue no matter how long. I mean, I've got clients that have homes and a father or mother who's passed away for a number of years, and it's in the estate of. So obviously those costs continue, and the estate obviously would pay that, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, a lot of times people will hold on to the property for whatever reason, and there are ongoing costs, and the bills continue to be sent, and whether there's water running or property taxes and so on, the bills continue to be sent out.
And I'll go back to when a number of us started around this table of the last 13 years that you can remember. Has those members of the estate or whoever's looking after the estate have come back to ask for relief on these?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Councillor Doucette and Councillor Butters.
I'll leave it, Mr. Mayor, because Mr. Seal asked the questions I was going to ask.
Okay. Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would only respectfully point out that by this motion on number 2, the estate still would pay the average of what would have been, that's the average what our staff worked out. So it's not like this motion says write off the whole thing. So in essence, that estate still would be responsible for what normally would be used. The excess amount of water is what really was the direct result of an absolutely horrendous situation for that family. So I don't have a problem supporting number 2 because I think it is a fair enough way to deal with it. Pay what would have been the norm and forgive what was outside of the norm, because this whole situation is outside of the norm, let's face it. I'll err on the side of that compassion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Further comments or questions? Councillor Butler.
Just one more thing I didn't mention was that I had contacted 28 people that pay water bills. This was in the grocery store and another business and some phone calls. 27 said absolutely the people should pay the full amount. They have no interest in doing it. And the other one was whatever you decide is quite fine with me. So, and the other option, I suppose, is that people really feel that that they think that this should be paid out of their water bill. I'm sure they could always make a donation to the family to help them pay the water bill. So, just another thought.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions or comments? I'm going to ask for leave of council to accept this motion, moved by Councillor Steele, seconded by Councillor Doucette. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? No, we're voting on leave. We're voting on leave. Sorry. So for leave, to be able to, blame Ashley. For leave, all those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. To the main motion, is there any further comments or questions by members of council? Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Worship. Just through you to Councillor Kennedy, just a clarification. So in essence, in your original motion is that we will go with option 2, and in fact, that as long as the region goes along with us, that's the amount that we would share to write off. Is that correct?
Councillor Kennedy.
Councillor Steele, I've asked that we pay the average, which is that 162. The one that we're writing off is 409, that we're writing off as unfortunate, you know, but I'm asking for his worship and Councillor Barrick, who said he would be very supportive, to bring that to the region and have that taken off from the region.
Okay. With no further questions or comments, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Be carried. Thank you, members.
You're heartless, B-A-S-T-R-E. On one news article I read, that's what I'm very funny. They got it all wrong. They could have written the story right after the story. See, now you know how they choose. Oh,
which way, what? Pardon me?
Oh, yeah.
I would have wrote the tower. Members of council, Regional Councillor Barrick is not here this evening, so if there's any Regional Council items, I'd be more than happy to entertain. Councillor Bonner?
When you go to the region to ask about the water bill, will you come back to us and let us know what the answer is?
I absolutely will.
Thank you, sir.
Unless you read the paper first. Members of council, any regional council business? Any questions or comments? I think a lot of it we got out from my report, and I think this regional council meeting coming up this Thursday will be very important as it relates to some of the amendments that are going to be entertained at that meeting. So with none, we'll now move on to the councillor items. Councillor items as well as staff responses. I'll start off my right, Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Your Worship. 2 items. First one, I know our acting CAO isn't responsible for this, but Mr. Heil is. There was a short letter from Ashley with regards to the request for investigation of the gasoline prices. We all received some information on that, so if you have any more information, I guess we have to be detectives now for the Competition Bureau, but that's fine. We can work with that. So I would hope that once the CAO is back, that I can sit with them and kind of put a process together to move forward with this. It was funny that the day after the story broke, gas prices fell like a rock.
Yeah, you stayed there for almost a month.
Well, not necessarily for about 3 days, until one station between 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. went from $1.16 to $1.27, and I was hounded. Not hounded. I shouldn't say hounded. People came to me actually at Sobeys while I was doing some grocery shopping for Christmas, and the one guy just looked at me and goes, "You wouldn't believe it. I just came from downtown. I was uptown this morning. It was $1.16, $9 or $1.17 if you round it up." He goes, "I just came by there now and it was $1.27." And I said, "Well, I just dropped my son off about an hour ago," and it was like $1.69. So I came back through town and saw it, and I thought, "Oh my gosh, here we go again." Yet at 4 o'clock it was down to about $1.18. So, but they all fell. They're all back up again to around $1.22, $23.9. I did buy gas 2 days ago in downtown Wainfleet for $1.17. Most other places up the highway that are normally traditionally lower are around $1.18, $19, some as high as $1.20 now. So we're still higher than the surrounding area, which still teased me. But anyways, I'll leave it for when the CAO is back. That was my first item. My second item, Your Worship, through you to Mr. Hanson in engineering. If you could just send a note down to Dwight and Paul thanking staff for 2 issues they looked after just prior to Christmas with some flooding along Rosemount with the new paving that happened. There's some drainage issues with regards to how the road is convexed, and how it flows. So they were able to, in a short quick fix, to remove the water from driveways, keep it from freezing. One is for a disabled member of one family, so it does get icy patches, and obviously we've been lucky so far, but in the last week we've had some freezing temperatures. So just please send a letter down there thanking the guys, their staff for a great job. And although it's not 100%, it's a lot better than it was. And the 2 residents are very grateful for that. So thank you.
Thank you. Further new business? Councilor Adams. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Ron. I had a phone call today. A gentleman that lives fairly close to the corner of Steele and Clarence. And his concern was not with snow plowing, but after the snow plows had gone by, there seemed to be a lack of salt in the intersection. He said he witnessed 5 or 6 cars go through the red light because they couldn't stop. His concern was not that cars were going to hit each other, but it is on the way to Port High and Steele Street School. He's just afraid that the kids are going to be walking across the road. Somebody's going to try to put the brakes on it, slide right into somebody. So he just wanted to say as a heads up, the next time the snow comes, if we could get some salt or sand at the intersection a little quicker, he'd probably rest a little easier.
Thank you. For the new business, Councilor Adams. Councilor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a great conversation with Mary Jean Thompson a week or so ago, and she wanted me to suggest to the BIA representatives for downtown from council if they would take some of her suggestions to the BIA. She would really like to see King George Park made very festive through the Christmas season. She kind of thought that up at this end of town it wasn't Christmassy enough, was her expression, and she really thought we missed an opportunity to kind of ramp it up in this downtown area. So she thought King George Park might be a great place to do some extra things, maybe through BIA, maybe through City Hall, maybe cooperation of both, and maybe a big Christmas tree. And she says Christmas tree, not holiday tree, by the way, just to be clear. She said just to make things inclusive. She said put up a menorah, put up whatever makes it inclusive for all, and she just would like to see a little more fuss made down here at this end of town. So that was her suggestion, and I bring that forward for all you to take to your, and we did talk about the CIP and opportunities, and so she's quite excited about good things happening in that vein as well. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Any further new business? Councilor Adams. Members of staff, any updates? Mr. Sinez.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just as to the next budget meeting, as to whether or not next Monday, which is the off Monday, January 23rd, if that's available for councilors for the next budget meeting.
Members of council, is that fine? Next Monday?
I'm going to be there. You guys can do it.
Next Monday is good? Okay. And we have our services review as well. Mr. Sinez?
Yes, and actually there'll be an in-camera meeting first to do with budget, some budget items, and then come into the open session of budget. So be at council's pleasure as to what time you want to actually start the in-camera meeting.
5 o'clock, guys? 5 o'clock's fine? Okay, 5 o'clock? Okay, and then we can decide that night when we want to proceed with our next services audit meeting. And I'm going to pass on some information to members of council as well, because we're doing the same thing at the region, and we just had a meeting today with the audit committee. And I think there's some great, what I'm trying to do is align both regional and municipal. I've asked Brian to give you a call and chat with you with some of the things that we're doing down there. So we're in fact not reinventing the wheel when we're looking at auditing all the services and programs. Okay? Members of council, any further new business? Okay, with none, I do have some minutes here to adopt. I'm going to be looking for a mover and seconder. First off, we have the minutes of the 30th meeting, Special Committee of the Whole, December 5th, 2011. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Danch, Councillor Bodner, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. I have the minutes of the 31st meeting regular of Committee of the Whole, dated December 12th, 2011. Councillor Demeray, Councillor Steele, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Last set of minutes, members, is the minutes of the 32nd meeting special of Committee of the Whole, dated December 13th, 2011. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Doucette, Councillor Kenny, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you, members. We'll now move on to the consideration of the items requiring a separate discussion. The first item that members of council have pulled, Councillor Ron Bodner, item 8.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That Department of Community and Corporate Services report number 2012-1, subject endorsement of Block 8 Park as the location of the skateboard and BMX park be approved, recommending that the council of the City of Port Colborne approve the site selection of Block 8 Park for construction of the skateboard and BMX park.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder to that, please? Councillor Demeray, questions or comments? Councillor Bodner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If council will look at page 159 in our package, and I guess through you to Mr. Makins, when we look at where the BMX skateboard park is proposed to be, it sure looks way too big to go in the spot that it is. It overlaps the trail and it overlaps the sidewalk. Are we trying to squeeze something in to an area that, you know, just because we own the park, should be looking at another area? Can you enlighten us on that?
Mr. Makins.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, they just put a square there where it should be more of a rectangular shape. We did talk to the design consultants. They're looking at about 1,000 square meters as the size of the skateboard park, and they are looking at something that's going to be more elongated so that it can actually kind of fit between, so it will not affect the path or the sidewalk. And we are looking at something probably like a nautical theme or whatever, so we're talking even kind of in that corner might be the bow of the ship or whatever, and designed it that way so it will kind of fit in that space. And that meets the requirements of the CV2 to be happy with that. It will fit in there, it'll just the way the box is laid on the map, which is, should be more of a rectangle than a square.
Thank you. Councillor?
One more question, I guess, is the parking for this. If council will look north on that map, and as you know, parking is way down at the other end. Are we going to then be required or asked to put in a parking lot closer to that? Or are we going to allow parking on Mellenby Avenue to access that? And the reason I say that is if I was going to take my granddaughter there and hang around while she's going to skate, I certainly would want to be close enough to that park, not just kick her out some 200 yards or 300 yards away and let her go. So I think that's a practical question that, you know, are we going to have to pay for a parking lot to go in there?
Mr. Makins?
Through Mr. Mayor, Councilor Biden. We weren't looking at adding any additional parking. Most of the people we have spoken to, whatever, will be either riding their bikes or their skateboards to the park. Same thing with the washrooms are down the other end of the water, whatever, but they felt it wasn't too great of a distance to travel if they're on bike or on board or whatever. Some of the younger ones, it may be a bit of distance to walk from the parking lot, but we are looking at using the existing amenities in the park to satisfy the needs of the skateboard park. We felt that it would be adequate.
Thank you, Mr. Makins. Members of council, further questions or comments to this report? With none, I'll ask for your pleasure of the report. All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you, members. We'll now move on to the next item requiring separate discussion. Councillor Elliott, item 10.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That Department of Engineering and Operations, Engineering Division, report number 2012-3, subject combined sewer overflow management plan 2012 application for funding be approved, recommending that the Council of the City of Port Colborne by resolution support the application for funding to the region of Niagara for the CSO Management Action Plan, and further, that Council confirm the 2012 wastewater budget allocation $406,000 for the source reduction program.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder to that, please? Councillor Steele, questions or comments? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know that pipes underground probably don't get a lot of councilors excited, but when I read this report, it just it really made me smile to know that we're going to pay it forward. We're going to fix some stuff that needs fixing going forward and really create something good. I guess I reflect back on the report that we had in November from the arena area study, and the investment that we made was over $1 million. Payback was in 5 years. To me, that's absolutely a tremendous payback on the investment. I guess I'll bring this forward for Mr. Hansen's comments, because as I read through it, it just seemed like going to the region and ask for those 50-cent dollars is a win-win for us and for them, because of the water that's taken out of the treatment facility. So on that note, I'll allow Mr. Hansen the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Mr. Hansen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're very pleased to bring forward this report tonight. As Councillor Elliott has stated, there was measurable success with the CSO program in Arena. There's a good payback, good benefit to the municipality for these programs, and the opportunity to leverage $400,000 and get matching funds from the region is a great opportunity. We took a hard look after finishing the Arena area, and we're full bore into the Omer area now to have the same success there and complete that work. The next opportunity, it was obvious that Nickel Street was the area to go to. We did some flow monitoring in the past 6 months, and Nickel Street was a logical candidate for a couple of reasons. We have a very high infiltration inflow component in the Nickel Street area. We found there's over 120 direct connections of sump pumps to the sanitary sewer system, which adds a lot of treatment costs to the municipality. So if we're able to put together this program as we've outlined in the application to go to the region for an investment of $400,000 for the public side component of this program, $400,000 would be matching from the region. As council's aware, there's an additional component of the private side that's 100% our cost, and the cost in the case of Nickel is $300,000. So the overall program is $1.1 million, and in doing that, we're making an application this year with council's approval, and that'll be our application for 2013 as well. So we're hoping to do this program over 2 years in the Nickel Street area and complete it. The side benefit from this, as we've outlined in our application, is the East Waterfront CIP is going ahead in this exact area. So in order for that CIP to go ahead, have streetscaping done, improvements to the area, the infrastructure has to be in the proper shape to be able to do that. So this ties in nicely with the work that's going to be done. This ties in nicely with the CIP component, and again, it just gives us an opportunity to leverage the capital dollars that are available in the wastewater budget.
Thank you, Mr. Hansen. Well stated. Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Very much appreciate you lifting this item. It's very important that the public understands that. Members of council, any further questions or comments? Just a quick update to members of council. The motion that we had passed a few months ago with respect to those private connections has been tabled at the region at Public Works. What we agreed to do, and when I say we, I mean myself and the Commissioner of Public Works, Mr. Ken Butters at the region, instead of going through a debate at committee, we're going to sit down and discuss this, him and I, one-on-one, and come to some solution, some resolve to it, and then present that back to committee. And I'm quite confident we can. I think there has to be an understanding that with the capital deficit that we have, and I say deficit, I mean the infrastructure deficit that we have at the region, a lot of it is water, wastewater related. And with that, instead of, I use the word to some extent flippantly, continually putting money into these treatment centers to upgrade them because of capacity, for the amount of capital that's going in, we may be able to alleviate that capital by simply fixing the system with a lot less money. So he gets it. I think regional council gets it. I've sort of pounded it hard down there in terms of ensuring that both committee and councilors understand the difference between the capital as well as the efficiencies that can come out of an investment like this or investments like this. So I think based on discussion, Ron, I'm going to include you in those discussions as well, because you have some background on that with respect to what we did in the West Arena area and the savings that can accrue over time. And I think that's important for the regional council to understand, so that way those investments can come and go there versus continually putting those big dollars into the treatment facilities. Okay, so just a quick update with respect to that. Members of council, any further questions to this report? Your pleasure. All those in favor? Opposed? That'll be carried. Thank you. Well done, guys. Item 13, Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Your Worship. Move that the memorandum from Gary Makins, Manager of Community Services, read contract number 11-01R, West Side Arena and Lions Field concession operations, be received, and that the city clerk be authorized to prepare the appropriate bylaw for approval for the council meeting of January 16th, 2012.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder to that, please? Councillor Bodnar. Questions or comments? Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Makins. Just a clarification on the last paragraph on page 191. It states that this contract will be revisited in August of 2012 when decisions have been made regarding the decommissioning of West Side Arena and service providers for the Valley Health and Wellness Center. Just a clarification, the new concessions at our new facility will be contracted out a lot sooner than August 31st, I would hope.
Mr. Makins?
Correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. We hope to have something back before council's consideration probably February, March this year for the new Valley Center. This is only an extension of the existing contract at the West Arena, and it will end when the West Arena ends.
Correct. Okay, thank you. Yep.
Further comments or questions to this report? Your pleasure. All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you, members. We'll now move on to the final report requiring a separate discussion. Councillor Butters, item 14.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That Councillor Blank be recommended for appointment as the City of Port Colborne representative on the Planning Committee of the Port Colborne Wainfleet Family Literacy Event, that said councillor attend the 4th annual Port Colborne Wainfleet Family Literacy Event on February 4th, 2012, and that the Planning Committee of the Port Colborne Wainfleet Family Literacy Event be so advised.
Do you have a recommendation, councillor?
I'd be happy to go.
Well, there you go. Members, is there anybody else interested?
Don't jump forward.
Councillor Dadge.
You gotta be able
to read.
Ouch, ouch. Councillor Steele.
I'll move that we nominate Triple B, which would be Barb Blank Butters, to the blank position. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Steele. Do I have a seconder to that, please? Councillor Dadge. That was quick. Moved and seconded. Any questions, comments, speeches, or any declarations here? With none, all those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. I did that quickly so you wouldn't back out, Barbara. Thank you, members. I am going to, before I move on, give Mr. Makins an opportunity to highlight a report that was already passed, but I think it deserves some attention because it is a unique experience that's going to be happening over at our marina. Members of council, if you want to refer to item 9 on your agenda, page 163, with respect to the wakeboarding cable system, this is an individual that had approached me about 4 or 5 months ago, and I passed her on to Gary. And Gary's been looking after her since then, and Denise over at the marina. And I think it's a huge opportunity and something very unique to the city of Port Colborne. I'm going to allow Gary to highlight it. Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, we did have Amanda from this wakeboarding company come forward with an opportunity to, they'd love to get something in the Niagara region. There is already an existing one in Sarnia, it's the only one in southern Ontario. And so what this is, it allows an opportunity, it's a cable system. If you've ever been kind of either skiing or whatever, the kind of the cable that pulls you up the hill, this is similar, except instead of going up the hill, it pulls you around the lake. And what it is, it provides you an opportunity to wakeboard without a boat. And that's the exciting part, is the cost of, of a boat and gas and all that type of stuff makes the sport of wakeboarding almost, incomprehensible for a lot of our youth and young adults already. So this opportunity came forward. I'm going to be visiting it at the Toronto Boat Show on Wednesday this week. They have it in the indoor lake at the boat show. So we're going to take a look at it there. And they're going to bring forward a proposal to council for your consideration. They are looking at funding 100% of the cost, so there is no startup cost or anything like that. There's no operating cost for the city. What they would do is give the city a percentage of the revenues that they could incorporate with this, and part of the sponsorship and that type of stuff. So looking at something down at the marina, I think the reason why Denise really likes it is it may get people involved in a sport that they may not be able to afford. And, hopefully if they do well in the life later on, they may afford a boat, and then certainly that brings more slips or whatever at the marina. So we want to take this opportunity to get that chance for people to wakeboard without that high capital cost. And like I mentioned in the report, you know, we may go from a municipality that had very little for our youth and young adults here in this area to something that, you know, is very unique to this area. Well, actually, we anticipate bringing in some people to this area, some tourism, and people coming down and staying. If it goes very well, we'd love to have it highlighted at Canal Days, maybe possibly a competition, that type of stuff. So it really has a great upside, and certainly after we take an opportunity to view it at the boat show, and we'll bring the report back to council's consideration, and you can, maybe at that time we'll have Amanda from the company come here and highlight it at the next council meeting.
Thank you, Gary. Any questions or comments? Councillor Butters?
I have two questions. The first one is there anything like this wakeboarding like anywhere near us? And the second question is, are you going to personally try it out? And if you are, I want to see pictures.
There isn't, sorry. Gary?
Yeah, there is one, and definitely I'm going to try it. I don't know if I'll try it in Toronto, but I'll definitely try it when it comes here.
Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Makins. Three real quick questions. Where's it going to be located with respect to the marina? Does it impact the RFP that we're proposing to bring forward for 2013? Do you got room in your car to go up on Wednesday? Because I'd like to see this thing in action.
Mr. Makins?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely. We haven't determined the site yet. That'll be part of that plan that we bring forward or whatever. We'll certainly work with our engineering and that type of stuff to make sure that it, you know, fits the proper area. It doesn't affect our marina. We want to make sure that it will not affect our RFP at all. It should be in an unused space now, or whatever, so we'll take a look at that. And certainly we'd love to travel up on Wednesday.
Thank you. Councillor Steele?
Thank you, Your Worship. I've seen it in action at the boat show. I've worked at the boat show a number of years with one of my insurers. And in free time, I've gone over to Rico Coliseum where they do have the lake, which is only a few feet deep. They run Sea-Doos in there, which tow skiers and wakeboarders. They have the zip line for both the ski jumpers, the water ski jumpers, and the wakeboarders, and it's amazing. Up in the Muskokas, a number of the schools up there have this now. It's not new, but it's fairly new to most of the wakeboard avid guys and gals. My kids have been able to learn wakeboarding up there, but behind a boat. But this actually gets, especially the beginners out there, where they don't have to go to deep water. It can actually be done in a shallower sense. I think it'd be phenomenal. My kids love wakeboarding, kneeboarding, all that type of stuff. And to be able to go down there on a day when the lake may be a little too choppy, or to get the boat out, then they can be in closer to shore and be able to use it. So I think it's just another feather in our cap. And as you said, whether you're a youth or not, I wakeboard. I'll be 50 in March. I still wakeboard. I used to ski lots, but I do wakeboard. But I'll tell you, you go a lot slower wakeboarding, but it hurts 3 times as much when you fall. Believe me.
Notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion? When none, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn this portion of the meeting. Councillor Demery, Councillor Butters, all in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. Members of council will now move on to the council portion of tonight's meeting, which will in fact ratify all the decisions of the committee. First off, I'm going to ask the clerk to introduce any addendum items she may have.
None this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ashley. Members of council, I need a motion to confirm the agenda, please. Councillor Steele, Councillor Doucette, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Disclosures of interest? With none, I'll move on to the minutes. I do have 4 sets of minutes, and I'll do them in block. The first set of minutes of the 41st meeting special of council, November 28th, 2011. The minutes of the 44th meeting special of council, December 12th, 2011. The minutes of the 45th meeting special of council, December 12th, 2011. And the minutes of the 46th meeting regular of council of December 12th, 2011. Members of council, mover and seconder, please. Councillor Danch, Councillor Bodner. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. Are there any items requiring a separate discussion? With none, motion to receive the items, please. Councillor Kenny, Councillor Demery. Any questions or comments? Members, your pleasure to the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. I do have 2 proclamations, and once again, I'll be looking for a mover and a seconder. The first proclamation, that whereas Epilepsy Niagara's mission is to improve the quality of life for people living with epilepsy and or affected by epilepsy throughout the Niagara region. Within Niagara, approximately 5,000 people, members of council, 5,000 people are living with epilepsy or a seizure disorder. And whereas by increasing public awareness, Epilepsy Niagara will be educating the community to understand and accept those who suffer from epilepsy. And whereas events will be scheduled throughout the month of March in order to increase awareness of epilepsy throughout the community. A gala will take place on Friday, March 30th at John Michael's Banquet and Conference Center in the city of Thorold. And whereas March 26th is recognized as Purple Day, an idea created by Cassidy, a 9-year-old girl from Nova Scotia that has epilepsy. She decided that there should be one special day each year so that those who suffer from seizures wouldn't feel so alone. And whereas on March 26th, Niagara Falls and the Peace Bridge will be illuminated in the color purple, and community members will be encouraged to wear purple, all in an effort to create and increase awareness. Now therefore, I, Mayor Vance M. Badaway, proclaim March as Epilepsy Awareness Month here in the city of Port Colborne. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Elliott, Councillor Kenny. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you, members. The second proclamation, members, is that whereas Canadians significantly help improve the quality of life in various communities around the world by their involvement as international development stakeholders, volunteers, and supporters. And whereas throughout 2012, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, the FCM, will celebrate 25 years of mobilizing the expertise of Canadian municipalities to support local governance, democratic practices, and the provision of essential services in 43 developing countries and counting. And whereas since 1987, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, FCM, has been a valued partner, together with the Canadian International Development Agency and member municipalities, in strengthening the effectiveness and focus of Canada's international aid. And whereas during the first full week of February each year, the Government of Canada celebrates Canada's contribution to international development and its commitment to improving the quality of life in various communities around this world. Now therefore, I, Mayor Vance M. Badaway, proclaim the week of February 5th to February 11th, 2012 as International Development Week in the city of Port Colborne. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Butters. Before I ask for the vote, I do want to recognize that the FCM's contributions over the past 25 years as a Canadian and world leader in international municipal development is second to none. Finally, I invite all citizens, each and every citizen, to become informed about international development to show our solidarity with developing countries and to continue to support Canadian municipalities' international community building efforts. Members of council, especially those members of council that are new, the city of Port Colborne had actually taken part in assisting a developing country, Namibia, a small community of Oshakati in Namibia. We took part for 3 years. I believe 3 years, Peter? Myself, along with the then CAO, Cecil Vincent, and the then Director of Corporate Services, Len Hunt, kicked it off by traveling down there and spending 18 days to really set the foundation for how Port Colborne was going to help develop this community, a war-torn community in Oshakati, Namibia, which was about a 45-minute drive south of the, I believe it was south of the Angola border, and it was truly a city devastated throughout the war years. And we had the opportunity to really go down there and help them redevelop their community, everything from, literally from the ground up. Everything from working with the schools, working with the different organizations, a lot of NGOs down there, non-government organizations, which became very challenging. But as well with the government itself, healthcare, hydro, all the utilities, striking a strategic plan, economic development, planning, operational services, and the list went on. We had a 3-year relationship. They came down here, we went down there. I know Peter was down there for a bit, really enjoyed his trip. And yeah, very interesting, to say the very least. It changed my life, to be quite honest with you. But we made a difference, and there's many municipalities throughout the country that do that for these developing countries. So this recommendation, you know, a lot of times we might just pass these through without thought, but really gives some thought to this, because it's very important that Canada as a country really exhibits leadership when it comes to developing these developing countries. So very important. So with that, members of council, all those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. I thank you. We'll now move on to the minutes of boards, commissions, and committees. We have 4 sets of minutes here, and once again, I'll be looking for a mover and seconder. The minutes of the Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee meeting of January 20th, 2011. I guess that was a long time coming, eh?
If you look carefully, you'll notice that they're all there.
I see that. February 24th, 2011,
Somehow they
April
didn't
7th,
get- Somehow they
2011.
didn't get here until, and they got together in mass, so.
So we have January 20th, February 24th, April 7th, May 12th, June 9th, July 7th, and November 1st, 2011. As well, we have the minutes of the Seniors Advisory Council meeting of November 17th, 2011, the minutes of the Volunteer Committee meeting of October 18th, 2011, and November 15th, 2011. And finally, the minutes of the Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting dated October 4th, 2011. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Doucette, Councillor Bodnar, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Members, are there any notices of motion? Madam Clerk, the introduction of the bylaws.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the following bylaws be read a first, second, third time and finally passed. Bylaw 57450112, being a bylaw to establish a schedule of rates and fees for Westside Arena, Centennial Pool, Roselawn Center, Nickel Beach, and municipal playing fields. Bylaw 57460212, being a bylaw to authorize entering into a lease agreement with Port Colborne Yacht Harbor Marine Limited, respecting the provision of full-service marine service shop at Sugarloaf Marina. Bylaw 57470312, being a bylaw to authorize the lease of part lots 17 and 18, concession 5, former township of Humberston, now the city of Port Colborne, to Indian Creek Acres Limited. Bylaw 57480412, being a bylaw to appoint Michael White of Blue Knight Security as a bylaw enforcement officer. And finally, bylaw 57490512, being a bylaw to authorize entering into a contract agreement with Tofolo Enterprises regarding contract 1101R Westside Arena and Lions Field concession operations.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Danch, Councillor Kenny, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Madam Clerk, the affirmatory bylaw, please.
That the following bylaw be read a first, second, third time and finally passed. Bylaw 57500612, being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Port Colborne at its regular meeting of Council January 16, 2012.
Thank you, Ashley. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Kenny, Councillor Demaray, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Great meeting tonight, guys. Great work. Before we do adjourn, I'm going to highlight a few meetings for those members of the public. First off, we have our next meeting, which will be next Monday, budget meeting. Open session will start around, Peter, 6:30 p.m. Peter, open session next Monday around 6:30 p.m. for budget.
I'd say, yeah, 5 o'clock is the in-camera, 6:30.
Yeah, okay.
Probably closer to 6:30.
Okay, 6:30 open session, budget meetings. For all you folks that want to be a part of our budget meeting, by all means, come on out and take part. Once again, next Monday, January 23rd, here in the chamber at 6:30 p.m. Following that, we do have a committee of the whole and council meeting, which is January 30th, 6:30 p.m. Once again, here in the chamber. And to all you members of council, thank you once again. Great meeting tonight. I do as well want to welcome Jack Custers here from COGECO. It's great to have the boss here behind the camera. Jack.
Such a quiet Jack.
At least we know he's not just a boss that does an audit.
Yeah, exactly. It's the producer. He actually is the guy that comes in behind the camera. So Jack, welcome. It's great to have you here. So with no further business, members of council, I will ask for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Kenny, Councillor Demaray, any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Have a wonderful week.